Welcome to Brazen Education with Educator Barnes, a podcast with a focus on speaking your truth, being transparent to help others, and having no shame about it. Because we can't move forward until the truth is known. Welcome back to another episode of Brazen Education. And with me today, I have Patrick Mullen-Coyoy, and he works at Michigan College, and he works with the Advising Corps. And I met Patrick probably a few years ago online. It's been years now. I know it's been years. And we connected. And I was able to connect to some of his students that he works with that's in his cohort. And I thought it would be super important to have him on here so we could talk a little bit about what he does and what the benefit is to secondary schools. So could you tell us a little bit about what the College Advising Corps is and how it works?
Yeah, so the College Advising Corps, there's a lot of umbrellas, right? But it's a national program. It kind of follows in the kind of model of Teach for America or AmeriCorps in the sense that you're working with generally recent graduates who are kind of near in age to students at high schools across the country. And those recent graduates are working as college advisors to help those students kind of figure out their post-secondary pathways. So, generally, it's kind of in the name College Advising Corps. So generally it's a focus on college and kind of the various pieces and parts of that process. So doing applications, doing financial aid applications, scholarships, talking to families, things like that. But it also, it's not necessarily just focused on four-year universities, right? We're housed in the University of Michigan, so we do have, obviously a very vested interest in making sure that students have the opportunity to apply and have all the resources they need to apply to the University of Michigan, which is a pretty selective institution. But also, we have students across the state. We have students wanting to apply to out-of-state schools. We have students wanting to apply to community colleges or do a trade certificate or do cosmetology school, the military. So it's very, very broad. So the College Advising Corps, kind of as a national nonprofit, partners with various universities across the country. So we kind of have individual programs. So again, we're based out of Michigan. So University of Michigan, we have our own program. Michigan State University has its own program, but also schools like, Indiana University Bloomington has a program, for example. So, and other various schools across the country. So there's kind of pockets of us scattered everywhere, and just trying to do the work in high schools of helping these students, kind of mostly seniors, but it could be various grades, figure out kind of what they need to do to reach their post-secondary pathways.
So how do you come to be involved in this particular kind of work?
Yeah, so I was, in 2017, I was graduating and didn't really kind of know what I was going to do after college. I had a majors in honors Latino studies, history, and Spanish. So it's kind of I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do with those. But I had worked as a peer advisor for a research program that we have for undergraduates. And so I was well, I'm an advisor now, and I think I could do some good work. I saw someone post on Facebook about the job opening, and I was I think I could do some good work. One of the high school that I attended was actually one of our partner schools. So I'm see, they're doing work in schools like my high school, so I would like to continue to give back a little bit. And I applied, and we did a very extensive interview process, and I got placed at Ypsilanti Community High School, not too far from actually the University of Michigan, so it was kind of down the road. And I worked for 2 years as a college advisor there. And we, it was difficult work, but, and it was work that I was kind of not certain I wanted to do for the rest of my life necessarily. I was kind of and in many ways, this is intended as a kind of gap year experience, or many advisors take it as a gap year experience, figuring out, do I want to work in schools, or some, some people are interested in social work, some people are interested in working in education. Others, like we have a lot of folks who want to do medicine in varying fields, and so they want to kind of develop bedside manner. And so I was just like, I'm not sure what I want to do, but this is good work. I did a pretty decent job at it, I think. And from there, kind of my director at the time wanted to hire a program coordinator who had that advising experience and would be able to kind of help boost the core and make it a little bit more robust. I guess what I've heard is that I had a lot of thoughts and critiques. And so, I was able to, being hired into this role, now program manager, able to kind of strengthen it. And in the same way that in the same way I wanted to help kind of students have a better college application experience, now I get to do the work of kind of making sure our advisors have a better advising experience and then are they able to better help their students, is kind of how I try to describe it.
No, that's great. And think it's awesome that you're the program manager, you have actual experience, because many times people, when they, rise into a leadership position, they never have done the job or even the work of the people that they are helping support. So I think that's awesome. So based on your experience and the people that's in the Advising Core program, could you explain to us what a day looks like for them? Like, how do they partner with the schools? How are they working with the school-based counselors? Like, what exactly would they do?
Yeah, so I answer this question in interviews all the time, but it is kind of a combination of, well, I mean, there's a lot of kind of the bureaucracy paperwork element of it, right? Like you're sitting at a computer, like entering data, like coming up with things. The more exciting part is, I think for most of our advisors, actually like doing the work of like helping them through these processes. And so what that looks like at different times of year will vary. Mind you, again, the like advisors, I think understandably there's a lot of confusion, right? Like, are they academic advisors? Are they advisors for the university? Are they recruiting? But they're really working as a supplement to the existing college and or counseling team at the high school, right? So like we're working in schools that often, schools across the country, right, often have very like outsized student to counselor ratios. And so our advisors are able to be that one person who, not to say the school hasn't focused on college or career advising, but they're able to be that one person who that counseling team or that college team can say, like, this person is like directly focused on doing this work with the senior class, right? Or they're able to help the counselor maybe that's directly focused on the senior class. They're able to help move through these pieces and parts with them. So they're doing like college 101 presentations. They are directly like scheduling events for the students. So they're scheduling the college reps to come in and visit and talk about what it means to go to this school. They're helping go on campus visits or college fairs. Depending on the school, right, they're helping plan financial aid nights or parent events, reaching out to parents, and doing a lot of the kind of meticulous work of helping students like discuss, talk about, brainstorm around what are their options for after high school, right? So what it looks like will vary depending on the school to school. So some schools it's like them and one counselor and that's the team, right? Some schools it's like there's a whole established team of like 4 counselors, one for each grade level, and they're able to work with that grade level counselor. They do have a site supervisor in every case, so there is someone there in the school, because again, they're serving for it's an AmeriCorps kind of program, so they're serving for 1 to 2 years. So in a lot of cases, they don't have a lot of time to kind of get to know the school, and so that person is helping them understand the environment and kind of navigate that. But they're really doing that kind of hands-on, on-the-ground work of making sure that those students have someone kind of who's a pathfinder, a wayfinder for like, okay, like you need resources around, applying to this institution. Let me find that. You need help with your financial aid, or you need me to call your parent. Let's get that done. And so they can really take that time to kind of hone in and drill down into hopefully what those students kind of more directly need as they figure out what they're going to do after they leave high school.
So how do the high schools get picked for the program? Because we know that there are sometimes hundreds of students to one school counselor, and that makes it really hard for them to do all the college and career ready and help them on their path. So are they schools that maybe are in that situation? Do the high schools reach out and say, I want to be part of this program? What does that partnership, how does that work?
Yeah, so in part it's based on funding, right? Depending on the specific program, there might be stipulations of like the grant that we're working off of or things like that. Some cases it comes down to what's it called, regional, kind of like where the specific core wants to, or kind of like has a mission to do work, right? And so like I've seen various structures. So like our core is very spread out across the state, whereas cores in like Boston or certain cores in Texas might have like, they might be embedded within a district or kind of like based very very closely around the university. And so the actual like strategy of like which partnerships exist will kind of differ a little bit depending on which state it is, which core it is, which university it is. But I mean, I think in general, like if a high school were interested in a program like that, it would come down to, reaching out, seeing if it's possible. And if not, I think, if that kind of direct partnership isn't possible, I think that at least like our program as well as many other programs, like we're going to do the work to try to connect you to the resources that will work for your school, right? Because like our advisors, in a lot of cases, we're also trying to make sure we're connecting resources. So even if it's like our program's not able to have an advisor there, maybe, is there a Gear Up program in your school? Is there a TRIO program in your school? Is there a nonprofit in the area that's doing that work? Sometimes that's the work we're doing too, is saying like, what are the other resources in this community we can connect you to? Because especially us, in recent years, we've had some difficulty hiring, and like many other industries. And so there have been times where we just haven't had an advisor placed at a school for some time, and we've had to say, like, what other resources can we find that are going to still support these students getting through this process? So I think, like, if a high school is, if I've learned anything, it's that there are many programs doing similar work. And so, like, if there is a college advising core near you, reaching out and seeing, like, hey, are you able to, partner with us? And if not, like, what are the other resources that we could be pointed to maybe that could work for our students? Because
Are
even if
there
it isn't,
any resources off the top of your head that you can name drop?
yeah, like I said, TRIO programs, Gear Up, if you have a Gear Up grant in your state. Let's see. I think just generally, there are an innumerable number of nonprofits that are doing this work. I think in the, and also a lot of like student organizations, sometimes at colleges or universities that are doing, more. A lot of folks want to do outreach too, is what I would say. So like even if there's something not established yet, in a lot of cases, there are people wanting to do this work. I think whether they're student groups or other people on campuses sometimes if you're near to one. So it can be worthwhile to just, I think, reach out and see what's available. I work within the University of Michigan. I work within the Center for Educational Outreach that more broadly does K-12 college access and outreach work. And so if you do have, if there's an organization like that in your area, that's fantastic. And I think also seeing if there are any kind of programs geared around helping specific kinds of student groups, right? So, for example, in Southwest Detroit, there's the Michigan Hispanic Collaborative that we've partnered with in the past, and they have a specific kind of focus around helping, Latino students. And similarly, there are other programs like that that I think, can exist in your community sometimes that might be of value. I think too, I've seen a lot of, sorry, I'm thinking of a lot of different kinds of programs, but a lot of, sometimes sororities and fraternities do some work, focused around having mentorship programs, things like that. Again, if it's not like an advisor in your school, it's fine. I think there's a lot of folks who are doing like after school kind of work that, also, or weekend kind of work. Folks at community centers, libraries that, help fill the pockets and help fill those voids for, different kinds of students. And I think it's all of those working together that really make sure that, these students have the support they need. Because, I know, for example, like I was an advisor and I wasn't the only one who was of value to my students. It was great that I was there all the time, but it was, the community working together, different people helping and supporting that really, I think, helped those students get there. Sorry, that was a bit of a roundabout answer. But
No, those are actual great resources. And just thinking about, like you said, just reaching out, because something that my elder used to say to me: a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So,
yeah,
like, if you don't speak up, like, you don't know what's out there. So you have to, at least the worst thing can happen is you reach out and that didn't work. So now you know to reach out and go down a different avenue. So one part that I want to talk about today is the actual high school students, because the whole point of this is to help them. The point of programs to help them craft these post-secondary plans. So, but also we know those students have parents, they have caregivers that also are wrapping their arms around them. But sometimes parents don't know what they don't know. Me in particular, my mom had a high school degree, my dad had an associate's degree, but when it came to going to four-year university, they didn't know, like, all the things that I had to do. A lot of that I had to, like, stumble through myself. And college is also not the end all be all. You have enrollment, enlistment, employment. So with all those things in mind, what are some things that you wish maybe parents or caregivers knew, or things they could actually do that's super important, especially once their kids hit that high school space?
yeah. I think back to my mom. Actually, she did a lot to my mom and my dad did a lot of work to put me in kind of like spaces that, like, looking back, I'm like, yeah, that's like what we should have done. Like that was the correct thing. Like a lot of the pre-college kind of like work of like, is there like a summer camp that's available? I did like, a little camp in like ninth grade where, I went to Michigan State University, which I'm from Lansing, Michigan. So it's like right next door. And, I learned a bit about like writing and like website development and stuff like that. And, I wasn't thinking about it like that at the time, but, I was like, getting exposed to, I'm like on the college campus, like I'm like seeing what it's like to kind of like be here. I took a computer class in like a lot younger grade at like the local community college. And so I think if you have one nearby, because I know not everyone does, if you have like a campus nearby, it can help to just like even just be in that space, show those students that like, show your child that like they can belong on that campus, right? Because I think like we get a lot of our images of like what it means to be a college student from, well, if you get them at all, like you get a lot of those images from media, right? And so being able to like be on campus and see like this is like a normal place, and people like me belong here, means a lot. If you have the access or the money or time to like, or transportation, to like do a summer program on a campus, I think that can be very fantastic. So that like early exposure, and a lot of these campuses also have like free campus visits or increasingly like virtual campus visits, so that if you're just interested in learning more, you can take a drive over there or sometimes hop on the website and just see like what does it look like. I think that's an important thing. I think too, it's just really sometimes advocating for like the information that you need, because there is so much, again, like you said, there's so much you don't know, and sometimes it can help to just say like, hey, what do like I need to be doing to help put my child in the right like mindset or set them up for success now, right? I think our advisors, and myself included, like you get to senior year and a lot of times you're like, I wish we could have like talked about some of this stuff with you earlier, because you could have done so much more. And not to say like we don't have like the capacity to do like a lot already. It's just like we have a lot less time to do like all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And so if you can like talk to that counselor, or if there is a college advisor about like what could I do to like help put my student in the right place, I think that's great. Even something as simple as like what like classes does my child need to do to make sure they're college ready, what classes, what kind of grades do they need to get in order to like be able to like apply to a school, a competitive school that they might like want to attend. Some of these things, like, yeah, you can do some work at senior year, but you can't like change a lot at that point, right? Like, you
Yeah.
know, your junior year transcript is kind of like generally for many students what you have to work with. And so if you can have like an AP or IB class on that that's available at your school, you know, it makes you a bit of a stronger candidate. Or if you have, you know, the ability to like study a bit for the SAT before you reach your junior year, or ACT, whatever it will be for your state. Um, you know, I know there's what's it called, increasingly test optional programs, but you know,
Yes, that's correct.
while the tests are still around, you know, if it helps them to study and, you know, take it and get higher scores, all the better. um I just like to be careful because I'm like, you know, they're still used for some metrics. So um I think just, yeah, asking, because you know, even a lot of students I would see, you know, you get to senior year and they're like, you're like, what's your GPA? And they're like, oh, I got like a 3 point something something. And it's like, that was your like quarter grade or semester grade from junior
Yeah.
year, but that's not the whole GPA. And it's like, it doesn't take long to show a student like, here's how your like GPA actually maps out or something. But you know, not every counselor has time for that. Not every school before like that senior year. In some cases, if you're like a student athlete, you need to take very specific classes in order to be eligible for like NCAA or something like that. And you can't like do it online. You have to like physically sit in that class. And so knowing that kind of stuff before senior year is great. Um, and I think also just, let's see, in terms of what you can do early, I think it's just being an advocate for your student and like what they want to do, right? Being able to like have those conversations of like, what do I need to do to be able to like help you reach the path that you want to. I know not everyone has like the same energy or time to do all of that, right? People are coming from a lot of different circumstances and have a lot of different you know, just constraints on their time, right? You know, some parents are working like way more than they should be. Some of our students are working way more than they should
Mm.
have to. But you know, being there for your student, being, I think, like a cheerleader is something that, you know, if everyone could do that for their student, I think it would help a lot, right? Because I think um, it's difficult when we, you know, run into a parent who's not willing to help their student like through financial aid paperwork, for example, or you know, who, you know, has made them feel like, you know, they you know, shouldn't go on to pursue their goals. And so like, if you can be someone who's there, like, it's a hard process, it's a hard process for everybody, right? It's a big decision, there's money involved, it's a lot of stuff that I think draws up like can drop a lot of like negative feelings, or just like, you know, stuff that like you haven't talked about as a family before. So if you can, you know, be at least as positive as possible and as supportive of your student as possible, you know, it goes a long way to being able to say like, you know, it goes a long way towards supporting them and making what is just, even with all the resources in the world, you know, a difficult decision and hard to navigate.
Well, I really appreciate. One of the things that really stood out to me about what you said is just really having a conversation. And I think a lot of times we're just not having conversations. You talk to parents, and they generally don't know what their children are interested in regards to what they will do when they're out of school. And I know there has to be a balance between letting kids be kids, but
Mhm.
also saying like at some point you'll be 18, and so are you looking at the military? Are you looking to just get a job when you come out of school? Do you want to go to college? And then understanding the process, because a lot of students, they don't even think of, by the time they think about their GPA, it's junior year when they're saying apply to colleges. And as to your point, there's not much you can do to change your GPA, because that's the paperwork, you're starting to send in then. So I really appreciate what you said. And then with the college campuses, like I took my boys, it was a couple years ago, and my boys will be in eighth grade next year.
Mhm.
We took them to Purdue and just to walk around campus. We had no other plan but to take them to the college that my husband and I went to just show them. And what was powerful about that is one thing to say that you can go to this school. It's another thing to take my black sons to the school. They see black kids on campus, and they're
Mhm.
like, oh, like oh, I can really go to this school. And then there were some like great people we ran into that were just very nice to them and just talk to them. And just those experiences and minus the gas it took us to drive back to West Lafayette from Indianapolis. I mean, it was a pretty much a free trip. And we just walked around campus and we talked about, we walked them to our dorm. And then we walked back to the campus and they're like, y'all had to walk 10 minutes to class. Yes. But even those little things, and I think about the fact when I went to school, there was nobody that had a conversation with me, but just about logistical things of like getting yourself together, getting to campus, getting back, making a plan because you may have a class for 50 minutes and you may have this gap. So are you going to go back to your dorm or are you going to stay in campus? When are you going to study? And so even starting that conversation, so I appreciate it a lot that you said that even if you are limited, constrained on time and finances, the least that caregivers and parents can do is just start having conversation. So you at least have an idea of what your kid is into. And then from there, you can start asking other people, like if you're interested in, I don't know, biology, you can reach out to the school. Have they taken the right science classes to be a biologist?
Mhm.
You know, then you have somewhere to start from. Earlier in this episode, you mentioned that the work is can be challenging. So, what type of challenges do your advisors face when working with students? And I know you have mentioned, you know, sometimes a parent may not be supportive, but are there any other things that you can lift up that are challenges that either advisors face or school counselors face that maybe the general public is just not aware of, like how heavy the load and the lift is for this work?
Yeah, I think that financial aid is, I think, like when I think of like challenges, especially this year, financial aid is typically one of the
Oh yeah,
hardest
it was FAFSA.
kind of things. Yeah, so the federal free application for federal student aid,
Yep.
the FAFSA is kind of the main portal application through which not only you're applying for federal aid, but it's the principal kind of like application that a lot of institutions use to actually like calculate aid for students. If your student wants to get money from even like a community college, in a lot of cases they're going to have to submit the FAFSA in order to like get access to that. A lot of scholarships might require the FAFSA, even like local ones might have that as a requirement. And so for anyone who's not done the FAFSA before, I describe it as like it's very like specifically attuned to work for like a very specific kind of family, right?
Mm.
You know, one where there's maybe like two parents who both have college degrees, can speak English, have great internet access, and like the time and energy to do it, and like have all their taxes accounted for. And if like one of the and are citizens, and if one of those things is like slightly off, it makes it a lot more difficult. Even if it's not like really structurally difficult, it's like, okay, like who does which parts of it, you know? So it's always been a very difficult process because you have to, it requires the student having a student and their social security number, the parent and their social security number, and then a bunch of like prior year tax information. So like not necessarily like last year, but like the year before that. So it requires you to like have access to your financial information. Everyone has like a social security number. You have to create a login. It requires like authentication. So now you have to like tie your like phone number or email to it, that kind of stuff. It's already like a lot to just get like logged in. It takes a minute sometimes based on like which questions you have to answer. And then you submit it to the institution, and hopefully there's no issues. And so that's like it's already usually difficult to do that because, as you might imagine, the student portion, you know, you can get that done, but sometimes there's still issues, like someone forgets their password, or you know, you put in like a social security number wrong, what have you. Then you add on that you need the parent information, and again, like now we're like, hey, can you show us like your tax information or like, you know, your W-2 forms? Like it's a heady kind of thing it's a heavy kind of thing to talk about. And you know, sometimes it's like easier to do it at the school, so it's like, can you come to the school, or can you know, when can we set up a time to do this? Like if you're working, like can you take time off, or can we do this at a time that'll work on a weekend? Like it can be difficult to coordinate that. And then this year, they updated the FAFSA to like the
Yes.
better FAFSA. And so the idea was that it would be streamlined to, you know, help you answer fewer questions, but it kept getting pushed back to like the last date of the calendar year, 2023. And then when it came out, it was really buggy. So you take all the process kind of issues it had before and then make it like a buggy application. And it's
Yeah.
even more difficult. And so even if a student maybe would complete it, then there were issues with like some of the data that was being sent to institutions or delays. And so I think what people, and I think, so the FAFSA is already one element that's like really hard to understand if you're not like talking about college applications access all the time, right? Or you're not like aware of that process. So you have to do that. And then there's like a whole other set of like steps that happens after that to get to the financial aid still. So like in a lot of cases for our students, it might, the FAFSA might get to the school and the school is then going to be like, we need to verify some of your information still. So then they might ask for your tax transcript, which is like, how do I order my tax transcript off the IRS website? A lot of people don't do that, like ordinarily. So you have to do that and submit more paperwork. And then maybe finally you'll get your award letter. And so this year, it's been really hard because you have this process that's been pushed back. The past few years, FAFSA is open, or the past several years, the FAFSA has opened October 1st. It opened January this year. So you've got like less time to do all of these steps. And, you know, the schools are delayed in getting your information back to you. And then maybe you still have to verify some piece of information on that end. And some schools have changed their decision deadlines or their kind of like commitment deadlines to be later. Some schools have not. But in general, it makes it much more difficult to make a decision, right? Because I don't know how much money I'm going to get from this school.
Right.
You know, certain schools have other ways of calculating it. University of Michigan, for example, uses the CSS profile, which is its own difficult form, but it makes it really hard to kind of like know, like make an informed decision about where you're going to go because you don't know how much money you're going to pay, you don't know how much aid you're going to get. And so you're left kind of in the middle of May, still like, you know, saying, I don't really know what I'm going to get. I don't have a great decision. And for a lot of our students, you know, students kind of like seniors leave the high school anytime between like mid-May and like end of May. And so if they haven't figured that stuff out by then, you know, they, unless they're like really diligent about maintaining relationships with their counselor or their college advisor, like they no longer have as much access to like those resources, you know, as they would in their day-to-day life. And so it's just this year in particular, that financial aid process has kind of pushed things back like way more than desired. I think that's kind of the, at least this year, that's one of the principal issues I think that our advisors have faced. And then, you know, there's a host of other things like just college applications in general is a weird bureaucracy to try to navigate. And even some of the like elements so that, you know, you might want to do a little, that you might want to offer are hard to get. Like, you know, can I take my students to a campus visit? Do I have money for the bus? Do I have money for like, you know, food if they're, you know, they want lunch? Certain advisors have dealt with that. You know, sometimes it's just difficult putting together like events at the proper time to like really help all the students get to that, get through these processes. And this is all on top of like, you know, advisors being very diligent and hardworking, but like trying to get to know like a whole school environment that they might be new to, right? All of those kind of like first year educator or staff like issues that you're like, I'm trying to learn how this school works. I'm trying to learn like, you know, who are the people, who are the right like resources. And so it's a very demanding job. Whenever someone asks like, you know, what this job is, I'm like, it's one of the hardest jobs you can't do because you have to be a lot of things to students. You know, you're part counselor, part like social worker, like, you know, helping them connect to a variety of resources you're learning about in the moment. We train them, right? But, you know, there's a lot of particularities of the work that you are learning as it happens. And so, and you're also trying to like connect with students and like build those relationships and so it's very rewarding work once you get to the end of it, but it is difficult and you know, very necessary.
I'm glad you lifted up school bus transportation because I think it's not as well known to parents in the community that a lot of schools have cut back on any type of field trips because their
Yep.
school districts cannot afford the fees for the buses and to pay the drivers. That has been like a real issue just for any type of off campus endeavors. And so a lot of times I'll hear people like, why are my taxes going up again for schools, or why is this referendum being passed? I'm like, for little things such as being able to take kids off of campus to a college visit, because you got to pay somebody, you got to put the
Mhm.
gas in the bus, you got to pay for somebody's time, and then the bus driver got to come back and get you and take you back to the school. So there's a lot of things that people don't know. But you also talked about this being a very rewarding experience. So what are some of the glows or success stories that have come out of the advising course, whether that be with an advisor figuring out what they want to do, because I know you said it could be a gap year for them, or for high school students, figuring out what they want to do working with a college advisor.
Yeah, I think for me, I just love seeing where advisors like go after they do this work, right? So it is my director Michael Turner and I definitely see it as like a coaching program. Like we're here to they're young professionals. We're trying to like boost them up to do whatever they want to do after this work as well. And so we just actually had a like kind of larger celebration where we saw like a lot of those past advisors who are now doing work, at other universities, at our university, um, and like who are working in admissions, who are working in financial aid themselves. So that's always really rewarding. We just saw like an advisor who came back who's doing work with like Crayola to do artwork, like art-based education with students. People from my year, we're doing work in recruitment and other work with like nonprofits that do college access work with youth and adult learners. So I think it's been I love seeing like where people have gone afterwards. And these are like the ones I've worked with and the advisors I've worked with and the advisors I've helped to manage. Like, we have many others who are like now directors or leading, programs or, at the national level or at the governmental level. And so that's really cool. In terms of the students, I think, I mean, first of all, my win is always like when a student gets like a scholarship because that's really
Mm.
great. I love seeing that. One I've had a couple of students now who I managed to reconnect with who got a scholarship that I helped them with, and it's helped them kind of continue through their journey as they've continued through community college and now transferring to, for example, the University of Michigan. And so it's been fantastic to see like, okay, cool, like you were able to get that support of like several $1,000s each year. That I'm not taking credit or whatever, but like I was able to help get you that money, and now you're able to kind of like you've gotten this far on your own and through your work, and hopefully you paid a little less for it, so that's fantastic. I think the one student that I think of most actually is one who I worked with my first year, who was really involved and really invested and like came to a lot of like college visits, and we were working on an application for I think Central Michigan University at one point. And we kind of just connected like on a what's it called? More personal level. Sometimes, she would talk about her, problems she was facing, and again to that point of like having to be emotionally supportive for students. And things kind of fell off for a while, but eventually she came back and we talked a little bit about cosmetology school because she, like she was really good already at doing hair and doing wigs and things like and styling wigs and things like that. And so we set her up to kind of do the visit at the local cosmetology program. And COVID hit like during the middle of that, but prior to that, I would visit her sometimes while she was doing the what's it called, like the student program or like giving haircuts there. So I would get like haircuts here and there from her as she went through that program. And now she actually has her own, business, and she's able, I follow her on Instagram and, see how she's doing with her braiding or what new style she has. And so that's been, I think, obviously like it's great when I see any student success, but she's the one I've managed to maintain the kind of most contact with. And so it's been just really cool to see someone like this many years out who's been able to really like they've been able to like reach that goal they set out to do like early on.
Right.
And it's not it's not like the 4 year pathway. Like, I think we focus on a lot when we talk about college, but like, it was a pathway that worked for her, that's able to make her money, and that she really set out to do, again, in the midst of like having to finish it off during like some very intense COVID years. So
Mm.
and here and there I see, old students on Facebook or like LinkedIn, and get updates that they've graduated or they've gone on to do other things. And some have taken longer than others, but I think it's just been cool to watch them, grow into young adults who are able to like do some of this. And hopefully I had a little hand in that. But it's kind of the work of the advising corps is really like a lot of those little moments together, right? And sometimes it's not going to happen till later, but I think I tell advisors all the time, like, if you can look back and say, like, I tried to get, if you can say you planted some seeds and, maybe those are going to grow later, maybe they're going to see college as an option later on, or maybe they like at least know that that has been an option to them or that is open to them. Like, that's the most, I think that's the least we can do, right? Is make sure they know that, like, if you want college, it's an option for you. We're here to help you out. And, if you take some time to get there, so be it. But at least, we're here to provide that help while you're here in the high school.
So if someone's watching as we're starting to come to a close and they're like, I think I want to do this advisor program, I want to participate, how do they get involved in this program?
Yeah, so I think that, well, at least for us, usually it's, what's it called? Being so generally across the programs, like it'll differ what the requirements are. Um, I think most programs are a little looser. It used to be you had to be like a graduate of that institution. It's a little broader now. So, for example, we have advisors who come from a variety of institutions across Michigan. So, really, it's like finding where like a college advising corps program is, and just applying. Like I said, still hiring for this year too. So it's just a matter of like finding where those programs are and applying. Again, it is like a near peer model, so the goal is like recent graduates as well. But I think, again, to my kind of an earlier point, like there's a lot of people I think who want to do this work and a lot of like ways it can be done. And so even if it's, if you don't fit into that model of like who an advisor is at this point, there's a lot of, I think there tend to be a lot of like, either there's something in your community you could probably find where you can lend a hand there, whether it's like, helping with scholarships or helping organize parents, right? Helping make sure other people know what are the things that you need to do to make sure your students are prepared. Even something as simple as being like the parent who's like, hey guys, like, I heard that we should start looking at like, into the FAFSA and like let's talk about that. And did you know that like, our students are going to have to do this? That's already like good work of advocating for more people to know it and having more access to more information. But sorry, I'm going a little roundabout. I think that there's just like a lot of ways you can get involved. And so whether it's like something as simple as that, or finding a local nonprofit or kind of community organization that's doing that work, or serving as an advisor yourself, there's a lot of ways to do the work of helping students kind of get to their goals and get to their pathways. Even if it's just helping someone in your community, like looking through their application essay and doing that work, like that's already a great boon. What maybe it's like you're helping write a recommendation letter for a student or like a student who's an employee of yours or who you've mentored. Maybe it's just encouraging some young person to like, hey, I know you're graduating soon. Have you looked at scholarships? A lot of, one thing I'll say here to just add is that for a lot of students, like, unless like this is an extra thing, right? I say it all the time, like our students are used to doing classes and like hanging out with friends and doing jobs a lot of times that take up a lot of their time and energy, working to help support family, things like that. And this is like an extra thing on top of that, that they're maybe not used to, or that's extra. And if they don't have time in school for it, like it's going to require a lot of people doing that work of reminding them and supporting them and kind of motivating them. And so if you can be even just like one more voice who's helping motivate that student to get things done and kind of, get to the end and navigate the harder parts, right? Because, getting rejected from a school or like, not making certain, like, what's it called? Getting some like news you didn't want, or not getting that scholarship you applied for. If you can be one of those people who's like continuing to root them on, I think that that's still very important and necessary work. And if you can be part of that village and part of those cheerleaders, I think that's already really, really valuable.
Well, Patrick, it's always a joy to talk with you. You always have good advice and good thoughts. I mean, you're such a passionate advocate for this work and supporting high school students and supporting your advisors as well. So, thanks for stopping by Brazen Education. As always, I appreciate everything that you're doing out here in the community. And if you're listening out there, I remember what he said, like, you can go do something. You can take the next step. You can do something as little as just help one student. So do something. So thanks so much, y'all.